study it yet again. We say this is important. We ought to get on with it. And time passes. And we have another president with another order. And in between, there are a lot of things going on. Clinton, Bush, Obama. Will it be the next president that actually gets to put in another presidential order and say, you know, we really ought to do something about the single point of failure for the entire American economy and our national defense? And we really ought to do something about it. Or will the next president come into office after the passage of another time period, which is now, how many months? 18? And we don't need another presidential order to say, you know, we really ought to do something about this. Because this group in this room has taken the initiative to get it done. To get it done. I suspect this little piece of legislation, H.R. 1678, will be some small chapter in some big bill. And the Department of Defense, I'm sorry, Department of Transportation, you don't have any money. But you guys do. And we're going to get it done. And you're the folks that have been working on this for sometimes a career, sometimes for a decade, sometimes for several decades. And you're the ones that are going to get it done. And someday, God help us, you'll never be needed in a true emergency. But it'll always be there. It will always be there as a backup and as a useful part of our timing, positioning, and navigation. I want to thank all of you for the work you've done these many, many years and decades. You're on the right track, and it's going to happen. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, I do want to make one final little presentation on behalf.
Doug.
Oh, I know what this is.
I do have a question here. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Deanne, if you'd please introduce yourself.
I'm Deanne Davis. I'm inside GNSS.
Not only do I have a time problem, I've got a hearing problem. My receptor is not what it ought to be. Receiver, is that the better word?
The middle one.
There you go.
Is that any better?
It is.
Okay. So you were saying just now that in order to get past the federal time scale that things have been operating on, that DOT has no money to push for it, of course, same general problem. DOT has the money. Are you suggesting, how would you fix that? The appropriations bill is already very much in play with authorization, same thing. So what are you suggesting might be possible?
Two things are possible. We already have language in the NDAA. I'm on the conference committee for the NDAA. It may be that we're actually going to move the NDAA. I haven't heard back from the negotiations that were going on today. If it doesn't happen today, then we have time, part of that congressional time clock, and that'll be into the fall when the NDAA actually goes forward. There's language in it that causes the Department of Defense to act. God help me, but it actually says study by January. We can't be perfect. But it forces the Secretary to have a specific plan in place by January 1st of this coming year. That's pretty fast time, actually. And with that in place, it can move forward. We would want to see the actual language in the bill is much more direct to the Department of Defense, actually transfers from the Department of Transportation over to the Department of Defense the entire program, modifying what is Title 10, which is the GPS statute. So we'll see how all of that works out. We've got a little bit of time, congressional time, to get that done. The appropriation process is another way that it may happen in the appropriation process. Anybody that's betting the appropriation process, any feds around here? Listen up. If you think this is going to happen in quick time, we're headed for a very difficult appropriation process this year. So we'll see. Plan on a CR, which is horrible, but that's probably what you ought to plan on. And maybe a shutdown, go on vacation for a few days. This is going to get pretty ugly on the appropriation side of things. So that's the other way it can be done. And it's also quite possible that these creatives that are coming along, great programs, the creative programs are great programs. And you can see the result of that. Those could maybe pick up the pace also. What I hope does not happen is that emergency arises, which would really kick everything into gear. And it could be done lickety-split, as my grandfather would say. In an emergency, it wouldn't take long to get this done, but I'd hope that doesn't happen. There you go.
Would this come under the council that's also suggested in the language of, I think it's authorizations out of sight. They propose to council the P&T for the Department of Defense. Is that something for planning?
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to ultimately be worked out. I will just tell you, I was a Deputy Secretary, #2 at the Department of Interior for almost 4 years. And I've got a certain thing about councils and studies and the like. And also lawyers that tell me I can't do it. I'd much rather they tell me how it could be done. So we'll see. We'll see how it actually comes together at the end of the day. I see you're taking careful notes and I'm being evasive. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here, Congressman. My name is Bill Clary, and I support the executive agent for space staff in the Pentagon. And I actually have sort of a civics question. You mentioned that it would take about $40 million to get the ELRAN established, at least a toehold on the continent. And since Congress appropriates money, what kept Congress from appropriating $40 million earmarked to DOT or DHS to go implement ELRAN as we've been told to do since back in the 20s?
You use my favorite word, earmark. But for the do-gooders that did bad when the Republicans took control of the House and did away with earmarks, there are no such things as earmarks anymore. However, in the appropriation process, there may be a way, and this is why I was a bit evasive on the appropriation side of it, there may be a way in the appropriations process. What has to happen between now and maybe that opportunity, should that opportunity arise, is an outcry from folks like you. I had a luncheon today with AT&T was there, some of the defense contractors. It's one of those special lunches that we have all the time, so forgive us for that. But they were there, and I talked about ELRAN, and they go, oh, FedEx was there. I said, I need to talk to you. And I said, yes, you do. So what happens, and perhaps from a meeting like this, is suddenly people start talking about, oh my goodness, what happens if your white van is interfering with the FedEx delivery? And FedEx, I think, has something to do with that FAA system there also. They are a significant airline, as is UPS and the rest. So we're trying to build an awareness of the vulnerability of the system. They basically know the vulnerability, but that something could be done. If we're able to do that, and one of the reasons I'm here and one of the reasons you're having your meeting is to build awareness. And if we can do that, and each of you in your own way should be doing that. You know, I just took advantage of a little lunch I had with a whole bunch of folks around that, wow, Wells Fargo. Oh, I'm going to go back and talk to my people about this one. That's what we need to do. And then that could happen. Not in an earmark, but in a sentence. It's 40 million. Give me a break, guys. We don't even think about numbers like that. Okay. Last question was just stated. there are much more interesting things to observe than me. So I'm going to let you go do that. Thank you so very, very much, and I will take that book that you're about to give to me.